Are you sick of government lackeys who say you didn't build that? Are you tired of elitists who think you need a government permission slip for everything? Everything you do is an A to B conversation, and the government should see their way out of it. Create true free markets by adopting the BIPCOT No Government License. The BIPCOT No Gov license allows use or modification of any product, service, or software except by governments or government agents. Go to bipcot.org. That's Bravo, India, Papa, Charlie, Oscar, Tango.org.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network, and theseedsofliberty.com and theconsciousresistance.com. So today we have Mitchell Wiecek, who's coming in from Florida. He is an agorist, anarchist, graphic artist, and meme creator. His Facebook pages are Agoristball, Anarchy-ball, My Big Fat Balls, and Captain Anarchy, his newest baby. He's also on Twitter at Agoristball. You can find him there. And we're going to talk a little bit about this one website that he's associated with. It's called ICHA Foundation, ICHA Foundation.com. So we'll talk about that and and some other things. So Mitchell, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Hey, it's good to be on here, Danilo.
Yeah, I've been a contributor to Agoristball for a while now, and I really enjoyed it. And I think when I first started, you had very, I had more likes than you basically, right? And then you just shot past me.
you did, and none of that was expected. Like, I remember I added you on because I thought, that would be a good idea to bring likes our way because his show was on BVN. He was a cool guy, and I'll tell you, it was hilarious to just watch that happen. That's honestly what pushed me into graphic arts as what I want to do for a living, what I am doing for a living.
Awesome, yeah. You do the cartoons and the comic with the balls, and which is awesome. I know a lot of people love those things. And I think it's a great way to spread the message. Like so many other people use different platforms, like blogging, article writing, podcasting, rapping. Being an author, writing books. So the comics is just another way to do that, and it's just awesome. We interviewed on the Seeds of Liberty this woman, Brittany Schaefer. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She wrote this comic book called the Urban Yogini, which is like a superhero that can't use violence. It's pretty interesting. It's like has to conform to the non-aggression principle, and then you have Jamie Lloyd, I think his name, Jack Lloyd, who made the Voluntaryist comic. Have you seen that?
Yeah, he's actually a good friend of mine.
Cool. Yeah, he's an awesome guy. So the comic, I'm really happy to see people using this comic book platform to promote the message. The more the better. So before we get into that, please talk a little bit about your history, how you came to anarchy and agorism.
Oh man, that's a long one. I grew up mainly a hardcore Republican. That's just the family I was grown. Well, at least on my dad's side. Literally, if you know my last name at all and you live in Michigan, you know my uncle as the guy who ran for office under the Republican Party a few years back, and Mayor Warren. But great uncle. But eventually, somewhere after 2008, I just got very disenfranchised with the system. I started to really see that for the sham it really was. I think really the first thing I noticed was Obama beating George Bush's record for medical marijuana raids in his first term. And from there, I really didn't expect this, but I got to give credit to some private schools out there. They do a good job with their education, and I was lucky enough to get a private education for a few years of high school. And in that, I ended up reading George Orwell's Animal Farm.
Oh yeah.
And at first glance, I'm thinking this guy's a socialist. This is gonna fucking suck. But no. It was a really great novel, and aside from proving as an allegory for what happened to the Soviet Union, I really think you can look at almost all cycles of government and take something from that.
Mm-hmm.
Those who seek to do something good eventually become the pigs, eventually become the humans that they got rid of. Eventually the pig. Spoiler alert. Yeah. But from there I became very much so a democratic socialist. Not like Bernie Sanders, just more of like a George Orwell-oriented democratic socialist. If you were to ask me at the time, I'd still probably call myself a communist. But from there, that eventually led into anarcho-communism, to which I kept on being called a bourgeois liberal. Got drawn more to voluntarism after that through Ron Paul, out of all people.
So let me just clear something up. So you're 20 years old right now. So in 2008 you were 12, right? Right?
Yeah.
So you started paying attention to politics at 12 years old. Is what you're telling me, right?
Paying attention to politics when I was young. I kept on being told when I was young that, why the fuck are you talking about this? You're a little fucking kid. That's I can remember that, like, well, not in those words, obviously, but I can just remember things like that happening a lot.
Yeah. I definitely was not thinking about that at 12. For me, it was more like chess and piano and physics and cosmology and astronomy and
Star Wars and shit.
Philosophy.
I wasn't just like a loser kid.
Well, loser is a harsh term. I mean, there's different levels of, I guess, outcast. I guess that's what we all are. We all accept the fact that we're going against the grain and choosing a different path, not necessarily because it's easy, but because it's moral. Right, and virtuous, and that's the reason I take it anyway. But yeah, it's really awesome that you eventually came to voluntarism, and it's funny through Ron Paul, it's just so funny how this politician who is a politician, he's not a voluntarist or an anarchist, that he has done arguably much more than even like Murray Rothbard, the greats have done to convince people. Because he's out there, like politics is a platform, people pay attention to it, and he used it well.
Yeah, another thing with Ron is he had a good history to back himself up, with the exception of those letters which supposedly came from Murray Rothbard.
Yeah. So yeah,
that definitely helped out a lot, which I have to admit definitely was more appealing to me.
Yeah. I like to tell people that, well, on the Seeds of Liberty, we have a occasional confession of sins, and I say I voted for Obama in 2008, and
say it. Quote 70 lines from Anatomy of the State, my child.
Right. Oh, Anatomy of the State. That was awesome. That was mind opening for me. I'll never be the same after that. It's amazing how sometimes you read something and you're like, wow, that guy just said in words what I've been trying to say, or what's been in my mind, but I haven't been able to put it down on paper or just say it like that. Like it's just crystallizes the thoughts.
Yeah.
So what books can you just get into a little bit of the books that have influenced you? I'm just curious. You said Animal Farm, and then some of Murray Rothbard's, I assume, right?
Yeah, and George Orwell will actually come up shortly after this. Basically, yeah, with Rothbard, I kept on hearing about him through people in the community, and there was one video I had seen in particular of him, which I'm not going to lie, made me laugh my ass off the first time I saw it. Because here I am seeing all these quotes, all these memes and everything, and I was not expecting him to have the voice he did.
Oh, you mean Murray Rothbard's voice?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the guy, but
I think he has like a comedian's voice, I think.
Well, you see, it's a really interesting voice, that's for sure. It made for a funny one-act play that he wrote ripping on Ayn Rand.
Right. Yeah. It's like Abbott and Costello, or some kind of Three Stooges type of.
It really is. It really is. But his points on Martin Van Buren, I thought, were really good. Only as him being the best of the worst presidents.
Uh-huh.
Which his point, he was right. Out of all the ones out there, who honestly, out of all the worst, go figure, it's the one that we almost never talk about.
Which one was the one talking about the worst or the best of the worst? I guess, yeah, the best president.
That's the way Rothbard framed it.
To me, the best president is the one that served the least, and I think it was William Henry Harrison, who died like a month after he was inaugurated, and he was like bedridden the entire time. I would say to me, he's my hero. He's the best. He didn't do anything. That's excellent. It's awesome.
He went, gave his speech in the rain, got sick, died 30 days later.
Right. Yeah. You can't get much more laissez-faire than that, can you?
Very true. Very true.
So tell me what attracted you about agorism? Why do you consider yourself an agorist primarily?
Shortly after reading Anatomy of the State by Rothbard, I actually read the New Libertarian Manifesto by Samuel Rudkonkin.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of elaborated in areas that that really just drew me in as someone who was more artistically oriented, someone who wanted to make a living off of their art. And with all these restrictions, like, I don't know if you know this, but it's illegal in Florida, in downtown Orlando, to go down there and just spray paint an art, do like spray paint. Like, I got an example right here if you want to see like what I've done in the past.
Sure.
But this sort of thing, you see it booming in New York and stuff. You see it booming all over these places, but here in Orlando, it's not really there. When I know it's there, but you might have seen like this sort of spray paint space art before.
Nice.
Yeah.
You did that?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Yeah, not just limited to the worlds of graphic arts.
Nice.
But yeah, you can't just go downtown and do that and make money off of it. You can't just go to an open park and an open public park and do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what's the fine for that?
I honestly have no clue. Well, they just tell you to shut the fuck down.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that reminds me of is Larkin Rose was saying that one of the best things, best ways to change or nullify laws is to make them unenforceable, right? And the best way to do that is to make them too dangerous for law enforcement to enforce them.
To arrest too many people. That's always the thing that some people have said.
Yeah, and I believe that's the reason that prohibition was lifted, because they just could no longer enforce it. Everyone was just like, the black market, I guess, was just getting too large, and so one thing Larkin Rose was saying was that if you were to have a lemonade stand in front of somebody's house with a couple of kids there, and then you were to have like some armed anarchists there, nicely armed. And if any law enforcement fascists try to come by and shut them down, they're like, nope, you're not shutting them down.
Oh God,
that would be wonderful. And I wonder if anybody would be willing to do that. But I think that's an awesome way to shed light on unjust laws. Yeah. Yeah,
no, it would be wonderful if all the busking musicians of Orlando would be willing to all go out there, and all the spray paint artists would be willing to go do that, because it would be unenforceable.
Yeah. Yeah. I was recently this past weekend in a sporting goods store, and this kid who was helping us in the bike section, I got into a conversation with him, and he said he's going to college now, and I said, "What are you going to study?" He says, "Criminal justice." And I said, "So what's the the end result of that?" He's like, "Oh, I want to be a cop like my father. He's a retired cop." And then I'm like, "Really?" and then so I asked him, "Do you think there are any unjust or immoral laws?" And he's like, "Of course there are." And I'm like, "But as a cop, aren't you sworn to enforce all of them unilaterally?" And he's like, "No. a cop has the discretion to enforce whatever they deem necessary. I'm like, but a law, you can get you get arrested for breaking the law, right? Doesn't matter what kind of a law it is, right?
Yeah.
and I didn't get too much of a chance to talk to him, but I'm like, he's like, no, you have to have probable cause for arrest. I'm like, well, if I have a broken taillight and I resist, you're going to arrest me, right? Yeah. But some laws are unjust and immoral. Yeah. And I'm like, and he just smiles. He's like, that's the U.S.
So please tell me which laws specifically are unjust and immoral? Which ones?
Yeah, I know. And if I just had a little more time, I would have gotten into the victimless crimes. The idea of victimless crimes, or even the idea of what do you call that? Crimes, basically preventative, like pre-crime laws, like seatbelt laws, right?
Yeah, what's the name of that one action movie about that?
Yeah, Minority Report.
Minority Report. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a great example of that kind of thing. That how you can get arrested for not having a seatbelt, but you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't hurt anybody. You just didn't have a seat.
If you want to be stupid as fuck and not wear your seatbelt, go ahead. That's the way I look at it. I mean, I'm going to wear it because, frankly, if anything were to happen, which I know it wouldn't behind the wheel, like if I weren't to wear it, I would be fine. But frankly, I want that to be there.
Right.
But if you don't want it to be there, that's on you if something goes wrong.
I know.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny how people are like, oh, and the way he put it, I said, why do you want to be a police officer? And he's like, because I want to do the right thing. I want to, and oh my God, I'm like,
well, at least his head is somewhat in the right place where he at least is good intentioned right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how all, tyranny occurs. That's how it starts, is with people having the right intentions, but just not thinking about what they're doing. He's, I guess he basically wants to be a tool for politicians without thinking, right? Because once you start thinking, you really can't be a good cop. To me, a good cop is a quit cop. There's no such thing. So yeah, I really wish I had a little more time to talk to him, and I hope I gave him something to think about. I don't know. One can only hope. Do you have these kind of conversations with people in public? Sometimes?
I've had lots of Dude, I go to college, so yeah, I've had quite many conversations.
Yeah, so tell me about the college atmosphere where you're going. Is it pretty socialist and pretty speech censoring, all the safe rooms and everything?
Yeah, but not as bad as other places. Like, I look at some of the stories coming out of all these higher-end universities, and I go to a community college, so you have to imagine, like, for the most part, like, the greater majority of people just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And so basically, even if it kind of is there, but no one really cares. Like, there's one guy I know, and he's a big Donald Trump supporter.
Uh-huh.
And yet, strangely enough, we're both on the same side whenever we're in class, because we're in a class with like an SJW professor and with all these like progressive liberal people. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those situations where, okay, I don't like you and you don't like me, but we can agree on X, Y, and Z, and we got to fend all of them off, man. Like,
we have a common enemy, right?
Yeah, we share this common enemy. I never thought I'd going side by side with a libertarian for Trump.
So do you find yourself self-censoring when you're at
no.
Or you freely speak your mind with people?
I've gotten to the point where I just don't give a shit. I'll speak my mind.
Uh-huh.
But the funny thing was, like, that Trump guy, he was trying to rustle some jimmies because he found out that apparently you can't wear a Donald Trump shirt on campus because it's listed under the hate speech shirts that you're not allowed to wear.
Really? Is it?
Yeah. I don't know if that's true or not, but apparently it is.
Wow.
And he wore the shirt to campus trying to be all edgy and shit. And I don't think it really resulted in anything because, I'll be honest, no one gives a shit enough to actually do anything. Like, sure, there's some comments here and there about, like, man, what the fuck's wrong? Like, of course there's comments, but, like, no one's actively going out of their way to do anything crazy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess in some sense that's a good thing. It's like in order for a paradigm to change, you really need a very passionate minority, maybe like 10%, maybe 15% of people, right, to really change the mentality of the herd. Because most people, they just go along with whatever is popular, whatever other people are doing, right?
That's the problem. Is the social justice culture has kind of been shoved in our faces and become somewhat something popular.
Yeah, this is true. And yeah, I guess that is part of our job, is to talk some sense, talk some economics.
We are the counterculture, my friend. We are the counter economy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love the idea of agorism. I bring that up a lot to people about it's very simple. It's like living your life outside the state, raising your kids outside of the state, transacting outside of the state, having a business outside of the state, right? Everything you do outside of the state. And I think that's so important to disempower and eviscerate the idea of statism, right? Because it only exists by people, first of all, paying taxes, but also people giving it legitimacy, right? So we do both, and so the idea is to just gently show people that you can live pretty well, without paying your tithe and your homage. One of my favorite memes I saw recently is of Obama in like a gangster outfit. You might have seen it. Maybe it was on your page.
I believe it was, my good friend.
So that was really awesome.
It's almost April. You got my money, bitch?
Yeah, I loved it. Did you make that one?
I didn't make that. That was actually one that I had saw, and it was too funny for me not to reshare.
Yeah, I mean, it is like that. I mean, it's funny how like now it's tax season, right? Now it's theft season, and so people are saying, "Did you do your taxes? Did you do your taxes? Did you do your taxes?" And it's like a very nice euphemism. It's more like did you give them your blood money? Did you give them your blood money?
Did you give Daddy his money?
It's important to say things as it is. I think that's one thing that I took away from Stefan Molyneux. He's always saying, his favorite Confucius saying, the beginning of wisdom is in calling things by their proper names. Right? We must dispense with political euphemisms and get people to see what's really going on. Right?
As I'm sure he would say, in the tax situation, you're the cattle giving the farmer his yield, his milk.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, chain slavery has been abolished, but free range slavery is still around, and it has been expanded to include everybody.
Are you familiar with Robert Nozick at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
I actually have you heard The Tale of a Slave? I believe it is.
Yeah.
I might be wrong.
Yeah. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I was. You just reminded me of that, and just learned about that not too long ago. At what point did this stop being the story of a slave? Right.
I first heard about that through Tom Woods. He mentioned that, and it's really amazing. Like, and I guess going along the same lines, if one question you can tell people on campus, I guess, is if 100% of your wealth is stolen, that's chain slavery, and 0% is complete freedom. At what percentage is it not slavery? Right? At what percent? And I think it's important for people to understand. It's not how much is being taxed, right? This is what the politicians are fighting over. We should steal this much from them. We should steal that much from them. This is where the stolen money should go. No, that's where the stolen money should go. And I think it's important for anarchists and agorists and voluntarists to point out maybe the problem is in the theft, right?
Maybe the problem lies in the fact that we're taking the money instead of letting people invest it freely in the market in businesses and solutions that could better their community and their lives.
And you say that, and you mean,
Shut up, Mimsy.
I mean, to me, I guess to us it sounds completely natural and second nature, makes sense. But it's amazing how something as simple as that is so difficult to grasp. Like,
No, I think the thing is, it sounds too simple for people to really wrap their head around. So they think because it's so simple, it must be utopian.
right? Yeah, and one thing that's important to point out to people when they object to that is, if you object or if you advocate for the restriction of other people's freedoms, eventually other people will advocate for the restriction of your freedoms, right? It's always that boomerang effect. It's never a one way. Everybody's always vying to be, masters over the other portion of the population, right? As Lysander Spooner says, right? Advocating for government is always a contest, between master and slave, in which one portion is master, the other portion is slave, and and that's civilization, ladies and gentlemen.
Lysander Spooner.
Have you read any of his?
I listened to the audiobook for No Treason back in high school.
Wow. Awesome.
There were a lot of times where I was in study halls, and honestly, I had the opportunity to listen to a lot of that sort of stuff.
Well, tell me about your experience in government school. I always like to hear that from people.
That wasn't government school. That was actually the private one. But,
you went to private. I see.
My experience, I've actually gone to every type of school you could think of, except I've never done homeschooling fully, but I've done like classes outside. And honestly, the way the state has that set up, I just don't enjoy it. Like the way they have the virtual schooling thing, it's very impractical for someone like myself. If you can manage to play that game, all power to you. Just not my cup of tea. But but the thing is, there was one private school that was good, but there was also a religious school which led me to atheism by the end, ironically.
So all these private schools were religious?
No, one of them was religious. One of them actually wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was actually no religion, just a private school, which I believe got bought out by a corporation not too long ago. Which some people say was a bad thing, but honestly, I don't see that as a bad thing. But I'm going off on a tangent there. But yeah, public schools are horrible. One of the ways I made my name in Liberty was by videotaping an army propaganda thing that my graphic arts class had to endure.
Really?
So basically, they took us onto this bus and led us through this pseudo Call of Duty simulation. It's still on YouTube if you ever want to see that. I could send that to you after this.
Yeah, I'll include that in the notes. Sure.
Fuck yeah, but basically, it's this pseudo like Call of Duty simulation, and it was just so ridiculous that I couldn't help but just take my camera out and videotape this.
Nice.
And it was just ridiculous. It was hilarious.
So what do you mean? What do you mean Call of Duty simulation? Like you're in a simulator?
We're in like a simulator, and it's like some sort of pseudo Call of Duty Halo thing, trying to get us to join the military, I guess.
Wow.
And by the end of this, I'm just like, I'm confounded with how ridiculous this actually is. Like, my dad isn't an anarchist by any extent, but I remember when I showed him this after this, before I uploaded it, he even kind of made a joke about the one word that the general has, and remember, we need to avoid civilian fire. Avoid killing civilians.
Yeah.
My dad made the joke, like, I just imagine the guy in the background was just like, no, Tom, come on, be serious. Like,
wow. So you didn't like believe it at all, like the propaganda.
Oh
like,
no,
like,
it got even worse at the end. I didn't videotape this one, but I felt like I should have had my camera for it. But literally, my senior year, I was at a public high school again, and for the last like few weeks, somewhere in there, they showed us an assembly for don't do drugs. Like, this was all in one day, one assembly, like a matter of like 2 hours. It was the assembly to not do drugs, support the troops, don't drink and drive, always have wishful thinking, everything you can think of. Every assembly you had, always brush your teeth. Every assembly you've had since you were in pre-K, all rolled into one right before you graduate.
Nice. Just make sure you don't forget it.
Including the extremely unmotivated motivational speaker to come in right at the end.
Unmotivated.
Like this guy was crippled, and like they show the video of the guy of how the guy got crippled. And then he just comes in on there not looking like he gives a fuck, like, yeah, it's good to party, just don't go too crazy. And then he just fucking leaves.
Nice.
Like, everything rolled into one.
Nice. And don't question, believe everything the politicians say, don't question anything, just pay your taxes, obey the law, and you'll be fine.
Oh yeah, I believe there was also something in there about taxation not being theft.
Oh man, but that's wow, that's interesting though. That I remember in my high school, I went to a government school, and I did not do JROTC, but I did get some calls from these recruiters, and they're pretty persistent, and they called a couple times. And it's amazing, how people think sending your kids to government school is such a benign thing, but really, when you look into the history of government schooling and institutionalized schooling, you realize that the first reason that they started doing it was to make conformist order followers, right? People who just obey orders without thinking, right? That was the reason, modeled after the Prussian system, and it's just sinister, and it's only gotten worse since then. And it's amazing. Like I also interviewed Katy Khaos. You familiar with her? Katy Khaos. She has a YouTube channel.
That name rings a bell for some reason.
Yeah. She's pretty good channel. And she's a government school teacher. She's going to leave quite soon, but she's an anarchist, voluntarist, and that's one thing that she was saying, how amazingly persistent and with the propaganda those recruiters are, and how they come in, they just want to whisk you away, free education, you get to see the world. You get, amazing experiences. You can serve your country. You can do, be a brave, courageous person. It's amazing how they cloak all the, what the military is all about, in this very nice language.
Well, the funny part is, I never think that the recruiters, for the most part, all the ones that I've met, have ever actually. They know what they're selling to the people. I don't think they actually know the full scope of what the experience that they are selling to them. You know what I mean? And because like a lot of these people who were recruiting at my place, they were young, man. They were about how old I am now.
Really? Oh, that young? Wow.
There was only one of them who was actually seemed like he could have been in the military at some point. Like the rest of them seemed like about my age.
Wow.
Maybe probably older, if I'd have to say. Like saying my young one that's probably more of a liberal estimate.
Yeah, and the other thing I remember hearing about is that the human brain, only really fully matures at around age 25, which kind of makes sense because so many kids who go into the military, let's say 17, 18 years old, they're overseas and they've already done horrific acts. That they regret, and they're like, why am I here? What did I just do? And it's so common to just realize after the fact, like why am I here? And I shouldn't be here. And then they come home, PTSD and all that, and with their drinking problem and everything, and so it's
it's a very sad state of affairs.
Yeah. So all right, yeah, definitely we'll include that video in the description below. But please go into your the ICHA Foundation, ICHA Foundation.com.
Yeah, the International Coalition for Human Action.
Right, that one.
Yeah.
And just tell tell my listeners what that's about, and how you came to be associated with them.
Yeah, I'm kind of an in-house graphic artist for them, and basically the International Coalition for Human Action is a coalition of all these things known as geolibres, which is kind of a term to describe. Excuse me. It's a term to describe sort of a free market autonomous zone, and this could be loosely. This is loose enough to describe one that could maybe totally ANCAP, like the Free State Project, or one you may have never heard of, Liberland in Norway.
Mm.
Both very ANCAP.
Cool.
But then you have more classical liberal like ones, like Liberland, if you're familiar with that one.
Yeah.
Or Liberland.
Yeah.
Yeah. And which it is interesting to note too. Liberland does have a provision in their I think their constitution that says that every 10 years they must vote on whether to dissolve the government or not.
Really?
Yeah. The government must vote on, okay, guys, is it time for us to dissolve? Is it time for us to go away?
Right.
That is like the best provision. Like, I'm not all for statism, but got to give them that. At least they have that in there.
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely an interesting thing, and I remember I think Jeff Berwick was talking to him and saying how people call him a little bit hypocritical because here he is an anarchist, and he made a country, right? And
Acapulco.
Yeah. I think he talked to him there. No.
That's actually another place we work with ICHA. But sorry, go on.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you square that circle? You're an anarchist, but you just made a country, and he's like, well, I mean, we live in a world dominated by nation states, and you have to declare yourself as a country, but I guess they're not really operating as a government. I don't know. I don't really think I know enough about it, but it sounds like a pretty pretty nice effort to achieve some freedom for people who want to go live there and live a little bit more free. So
yeah, there's a few different. Maybe that was back when he was trying to do Galt's Gulch, but now that's Freedom Gulch, which is a whole different project entirely. So
it's Freedom Gulch now?
It's a whole different project entirely now. Actually, Galt's Gulch is gone.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Galt's Gulch is gone. That entire project went down due to some very not fun stuff that happened with a guy stealing a bunch of the. There was a lot of dirty law. There was a lot of bad lawsuits. It was a very messy situation. And out of the remains of it, a bunch of people went and created a new place called Freedom Gulch, where basically they provided a lot of things that the original Galt's Gulch did not have. Which the new Freedom Gulch is actually a part of ICHA.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Yeah, the internet. They're in the coalition.
Cool. So the ICHA is just like a website where it brings all these together, like a central hub.
Yeah, but we also do a lot of other things. For instance, this summer we are going to be having our first summit, the Startup Society Summit.
And where's that going to be?
That is going to be in I believe Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Which that actually has its own site as well for the summit.
Oh, okay.
So
you guys are also associated with the Free State Project, right?
Yeah, the Free State Project is also associated with ICHA.
Yeah.
We are very fast growing.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, I love that there's these little communities popping up everywhere of freedom-minded people, and my wife is kind of nervous of them because it's like if the government wanted to drone bomb a bunch of anarchists, they know where to find them.
Oh, it wouldn't be a problem for them to cover it up either. They were a bunch of anarchists.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd make up some crazy shit. I mean, I've already seen white journalism of journalists saying that ISIS were reaching out to anarchists who rioted in Ferguson.
Really?
I'm no idiot. I mean, I'm no ANCOM, but I can, not anymore anyways, but I can pretty much figure out that I'm pretty sure they wouldn't join ISIS.
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure they joined the Kurds, if anything.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it is important, for us to to find our tribe and move next to people where we don't have to constantly be defending ourselves and defending against other people's attacks or, misconceptions or fallacies. It's fun, but it's also exhausting, right? And it's just nice. It's nice sometimes to just live near your own, not your own blood family necessarily, but your own ideological family.
It's kind of weird how anarchism has what's the word I'm trying to look for? It's kind of brought forward this sort of culture like that. Because have you ever seen the documentary Anarchism in America?
No.
I highly recommend looking it up. It kind of covers both collectivist anarchism and individualist anarchism. And it's very fair to both, so it's not really that bad. My only gripe is there is one wrong fact in there, which is that Peter Kropotkin and Michael Bakunin did not coin the term anarchism. That was actually Pierre Proudhon.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, the entire documentary is great. But it even kind of shows that sort of culture that is really came up around anarchism when it came in to the U.S. around the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm. So collectivist anarchists are the anarcho-communists, right?
No, anarcho-collectivism is actually different. Than that one, you still work, you get what you work for, you still make what you work for, and there still is money, but it's still collectivist based. In anarcho-communism, there is no money. Money is evil.
Right. Property is evil.
Everyone gets their fair share.
Right.
Yeah, there's all these like little differences between all the leftist ones. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I used to firmly be in the camp of the anarcho-capitalist, and I guess if you really push me, I would still say I'm an anarcho-capitalist, but I've come to the conclusion that it's not really necessary to have the hyphen. I'm just fine with the general term anarchist and voluntarist. I think it's less confusing for people. I think the simpler that we can explain our philosophy, the more likely it'll be understood by other people, right? So
exactly, and I'm not going to lie. That's another reason why I do like agorism as well. Is it's not very a threatening word. It's not one that I can go onto a college campus and say to like a group of SJWs and and automatically have them closed off to it. No, they'll listen then because they don't know what it is. At that point, they're genuinely curious with what you have to say. If you say you're advocating capitalism,
right,
you're generally going to close off a lot of minds.
Oh yeah.
Before you could even start the next sentence.
Definitely, yeah.
It's just the way things work.
So let me ask you, what is your definition that you tell people of what agorism is?
Agorism, I kind of elaborate on the Greek definition. The purest definition is just that it's the Greek place for markets and ideas, and for the exchange of markets and ideas. I kind of use that, but then I build off of it to kind of show how this is a free market. This is a sort of free place for exchange. This is where Socrates went to do his thing, but also here in our modern day, we also have counter-economics, which plays into agorism as well. Counter-economics being the way we used, counter-economics being the method we use to choke the state, utilizing gray and black markets, basically. Avoid the tax man at all costs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really an awesome way to transact and to live. I understand black markets has kind of a negative connotation. People think of like crime and
I actually have a very interesting thing with that, and that's another reason why I like agorism. Is it really, if you think about it enough, think about the ideas that are presented to you by Konkin, by the people who built off of his works, and I'm trying to remember the specific person who made the chart, but you basically have this chart that divides the markets into 5 markets. And
I saw that one.
Black and gray.
It's an awesome chart. Yeah, go ahead.
The red market.
Yeah.
Pink market.
Right. Yeah, when I first saw that chart, that's the first time I really understood the concept of 5 markets. So, did you make that one, by the way?
Well, it really helps. No, I didn't make that. That was made by That was made long ago, before I even discovered agorism.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who made that, but I honestly should ask J. Neil Schulman, the guy he actually knew Sam the Order to Conkin, and I know him. He wrote alongside Knight the Agorist fiction novel.
Nice.
But yeah, good guy. But he might actually have it. He'll know who made that. I can honestly just look it up after this. I honestly don't remember who it was off the top of my head. But really, it's a nice chart because it really helps differentiate. Like, because let's face it, there's a difference between Al Chapo and some guy who's selling weed out of his apartment just to make money to get by. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's just such a big difference. Like, they're not the same.
Right.
It's not the same situation. One guy has made his empire by literally killing off its competition. One guy's just doing it to pay the bills.
Your little friend selling weed is not paying off police officers and the DEA, not bribing them to leave them alone. You know.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference, right?
Very big difference. And like once you get into some of the more sick elements of things, like you have hitmen and like all these other weird things that just like involve human aggression. Mm-hmm. And like, yes, they're still illegal, but generally you don't really consider them black market because of all that stuff that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Because people, the idea of black market has a very negative connotation, right? Because that's immediately what people think of, like violent gangs and shootings, and and like you said, hitmen and things like that. Or like when I talk about the Darknet with people, I say, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of horrible things that you can buy on the Darknet, including hitmen. But there are also people that just want to transact outside the state, right? Use Bitcoin. And so I tell people I think it's a wonderful thing. And if you really think that the Darknet is a problem because there are hitmen, then you should have a bigger problem with the U.S. military. All right, stop being afraid. and Obama with the drones, like you're afraid of one hitman from the Darknet, but you're not afraid of hundreds of thousands of order followers who are willing to go overseas and kick down people's doors and raid people and just murder people who they never met just because they're following their orders. Like, you're not afraid of that, but you're afraid. Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how the dark web has brought up all these horror stories and stuff. But honestly, I've never had any reason to utilize it. I've only been on there once, literally just to see what it was like, see what the whole buzz was about. Never really used it for anything though. And I think it would be interesting for someone to go through there and take down do like a scoreboard of things on there that are black market and things on there that are red markets.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Let's see which one is more on the dark web. Because honestly, I think the red market elements would be a lot less than what we think.
Can you for the listeners who are not familiar with the 5 markets, can you just,
because it's not very uncommon nowadays for.
Right. So yeah, for our listeners who are not familiar with the 5 markets, can you just quickly explain them? The 5 markets?
Yeah, we have the white market, which is legal market. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. But you have the white market, which is the legal market, which we regularly purchase things from, or many people do. And then you have the gray market, which is it's generally untaxed, unregulated stuff, but the government doesn't really get involved in that. They don't really have any reason to go after it. Like, generally, this is things like flea markets, just Craigslist for the most part.
Okay.
Even though there's still some black market stuff that leaks onto Craigslist. Yeah, I'm sure there's some red market stuff on Craigslist as well. Craigslist is a weird place. But, but anyways, yeah, the gray market is that is also one that agorists like to utilize. I myself love to go to flea markets, swap meets, place things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost never any taxes involved at places like that for the most part, aside from that which is paid to the person who owns the property itself.
So it's mostly mostly cash at those?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For the most part, yeah.
Cool.
But after that, then you have the black market, which encompasses just black trade of things that the government does not want. being around at all. In this one, you get a lot of drugs, a lot of guns, but it doesn't guarantee violence. It's just simply there.
Mm-hmm.
The red market, on the other hand, which is below that, is a place where you will find things like hitmen, snuff films, sex slavery, just things that require human aggression.
Wait, snuff films? What is that?
Those are like that's a type of. Why are you making me describe this? Oh, you sick bastard!
Sorry, it's for the listeners.
I understand. It's basically a perverted type of film of someone doing illicit acts on someone who is dead, bleeding, or I honestly.
I see. Okay.
You see what I mean, like.
There's a word for that.
Shit for.
There's a word for that. I forget the name of it. Yeah. Okay. There's a specific word for that. All right.
Well, like snuff film is the way that's just what I've always heard.
Okay.
Like that's just the term that I've always heard to describe it. But that's a very red market industry. It requires killing people, requires aggression. Like
yeah, big time.
Yeah. Well, even things like pedophilia rings. It's a pure red market thing. Like,
right.
There's a reason why Agorist near it. It requires aggression. It goes even for those of you who are big on the non-aggression principle. It goes beyond the non-aggression principle.
Yep. Oh yeah.
It's not something we approve.
No way.
But then right next to that, right beside that, you have the pink market, which is the government's version of the red market.
Which would be
is where you
like the war on terror, you mean?
Yeah, the war on terror definitely encompasses that. I'm sure also Iran-Contra would fall under that.
Mm-hmm.
The way the government has fucked around in black markets and red markets over the years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, talking about the red market and those like child pornography and sex slavery and all that kind of stuff. There's this one guy on Facebook who regularly trolls my posts and says basically, you anarchists don't know what you're asking for. You all want child prostitution and sex slavery. That's what you want, isn't it? And yeah,
God,
I know.
Just because there are no rulers doesn't mean there's no rules.
Right. And I mean it's important to note that just because there's no coercive central authority, you still have the natural market forces of rating agencies and ostracism, boycotting, things like that. That play a pretty good role in limiting people's immoral behavior, and so I'm not really afraid of that. It's like if you're afraid of a lone hitman or a lone psychopath, you should be against the U.S. military, right? If you're afraid of
the funny thing.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
that's right.
The hitman thing again. I just thought I should say this.
Yeah.
I was watching this one guy who was doing deep web explorations on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
Where literally he was just videotaping himself and his reactions going on to different things. And every hitman site he goes on, and I have to agree with him, like they all look like FBI honeypots. Like they have like fixed rates and stuff, and like it's just when you think about it, it's like if you were a hitman, would you really have fixed rates like that? I mean, you have to figure like every one of these things has to be different. Like
right.
There's no way it's just that simple to give someone a fixed rate on all this stuff.
Yeah. Wow. I know. It's an interesting profession to be in. But yeah. So when people tell me, what about a rapist? If you're in an alleyway and there's no police and you don't believe in government and you have a rapist, I'm like, all right. So you're afraid of rape. All right. So then you should be against prisons.
Security servants.
Right.
Security services still exist.
Of course they do. Yeah, definitely. People, they
act first. We'll work it out later.
Yeah, I mean, people like I'm going to interview this guy Dale Brown from the Detroit Threat Management. I'm pretty excited. Viper, the Viper guy. So really, really excited to talk to him about that kind of stuff because I think it's like private security outnumbers law enforcement like 2/3 to 1/3, right? But you don't see videos on YouTube of private security, let's say mall security people accidentally, breaking people's arms or or tasing them to death or, kicking pregnant women or, you don't see that, right?
You don't. Because I'm not going to lie, you meet a lot of private company assholes too, but that's at any profession that you work with. But honestly, in that case, a lot of them don't really have an incentive on power.
No way.
Like, none of them are tripping balls on their power of the state. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have as many leeways.
Definitely. It's a majoring hindering factor for how they can act. The accountability that they have as a private business that law enforcement simply does not have. Right? Their funds are guaranteed at the point of a gun. Right? So they have no obligation to protect anybody or their property whatsoever. Right? And they're basically the only obligation they do have is to enforce politician scribbles, right? That's about it. The people definitely come second, and if you kind of divorce what people, if people try to divorce what they see in Hollywood, how cops act, and then see how they act in real life, you'll realize that very quickly. So, so is there anything else that you wanted to say any other message you want to say to my listeners before we close up? I don't want to keep you any longer.
Yeah, really, just go check out Agoristball. Go check out that newest experiment of ours, Captain Anarchy. Our little attempt to do a little superhero thing, or my little attempt. Why am I speaking in collectivist?
So you're going to be making comics for that? For the Captain Anarchy?
Yeah, it's just kind of my little experiment on the side there, I guess you could say. It feels weird to be back on voluntary virtues again. In case any of you don't know, I used to have a show on here called The Adorable Anarchist World back when I was actually in high school.
Man, good.
So,
I can't believe that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But if you'd ever want any graphic arts work done, feel free to contact my business page, Distance Arts, on Facebook.
Distance Arts. Oh, that's the name of your Facebook. Okay, cool.
That's just the graphic arts page, like purely the graphic arts page. Business, your business.
Cool.
Yeah.
So do you have a small business with that now? You have some clients?
I don't really have any clients right now, but it's just kind of back when I went to another school before the one I'm at now, because long story with colleges.
Yeah.
Basically, they had us set up an entire thing for our business, for like a personal business thing, and I ended up setting up Distance Arts, and the site is still out there on Flavors Me, but honestly, it's not up to date, and I've been eventually looking to create a better site. One that's more up to date. I mean, it still has me on there listed as someone who regularly makes videos on voluntary virtues.
Mm-hmm.
Which
really?
Isn't really the case.
So can we find samples of your work on there?
On there, no. But if you wanted to find them on Voluntary Virtues, I know they're still on there.
No. I mean samples of your artwork.
Oh yeah. You can find that on there. I only put the best of my portfolio on there, though. So there isn't a shitload of stuff on there.
All right, cool. Yeah, definitely include that in the show notes so people can check you out over there. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome conversation, Mitchell. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So one thing I like to ask of my guests before we sign off is, what's your favorite quote of all time?
Favorite quote of all time? It's a hard one, but there's always one that there's two that pop into mind. One that's too long for me to think of off the top of my head, and I'd have to look up, which is actually is referred to as the Chief Tecumseh poem, if you're familiar with that.
No.
But another one is it's more like an old saying, and I don't know who actually said it, but I've heard it somewhere, and I've never been able to actually track it down. But life is a comedy to those who view life as a tragedy to those who think.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that one too.
As anarchists, we need to laugh at the state. We need to laugh at the state.
Yes, definitely. I think when we learn about the state and what it actually is, I think the first inclination is to be angry and resentful and frustrated. But then after a while, you realize, well, that's not going to get you very far. People aren't attracted to your philosophy when they see your anger. Right. I think we have to portray ourselves as showing people that, our philosophy is one of freedom. We are anti-state. We are, anti-war, all these kinds of things. But we're also pro-freedom, pro-peace, and pro-love. Right. And I think that's important to get across for people because, I think that's the most important thing. Right. You got to focus on living fully and as invisibly to the state as possible. So definitely awesome. If anybody wants to help me out, you can do so through Bitcoin or Patreon or PayPal. Links are below. That's patreon.com/peacefulanarchism to help me out. I really enjoy interviewing some fascinating people like Mitchell here, and I really want to do more of it. And monetary compensation is appreciated. I'm a capitalist at the end, and I respond to incentives like all businesses do. And so, any monetary compensation will give me the right incentive to do that more often. So, thanks a lot for coming to the show, Mitchell. I really appreciate it. Wonderful conversation. So, this is Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network, and theconsciousresistance.com, and theseedsofliberty.com. Wishing everyone to have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.